Is an important paragraph formatting command, and equally important is the command or commands we use for setting indents. Let's take a look at indents. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change, before I work on indents, I'm going to change my font and my size here. We'll go back to Arial Black and choose a size of, let's say, 14 point. It's pretty readable. Okay, let's take a look at this one paragraph here. Now, you can tell it's one paragraph because we have a carriage return here and a carriage return here, indicating everything in between is one paragraph. What I'm going to do is just put a blinking cursor in the middle, and we're going to talk about indenting. Now, indenting means pushing this entire paragraph in. How a lot of people do this is they either try to use their space bar to push it in. Well, see, that's a problem because there's not a carriage return there. Anyway, spaces are generally a mess whenever you're trying to position something. Now, tabs could be used here, but even then, when you use the tab key to push, to indent a paragraph, Word steps in and actually overrides what you've done and does it the right way. In other words, sets an indent. Now, let's learn about setting indents. First of all, what is an indent? An indent is where Microsoft Word says, okay, you've got text here that we're not going to let it go flush to the margin. We're going to force that entire paragraph to either be indented from the left and pushed in, or indented from the right and pushed in, or maybe both. How do we make it happen? Well, let's go ahead and we'll pull out these, we'll get rid of these spaces. And with my cursor blinking inside the paragraph, I can do this the easy way, which is to use the button on the toolbar right up here. And every time, actually this one is to increase the indent, click once, and that will push the text in a bit. Click again, it pushes the text in even further. What it's doing is it's hopping half-inch increments to indent. Click over here, and I'm decreasing. Notice how, once again, I have not highlighted text. I only have a blinking cursor, and it's understood that since this is paragraph formatting, it's going to apply it to the whole paragraph. Now, this is a quick and easy way to get indenting to happen, but if you want to have a more precise system, you go here to the Format Paragraph command. And under Indents and Spacing, you can specifically type in a left indent of a certain amount. So, for example, I could say, well, I want a left indent of 0.77 inches and a right indent of 0.33 inches, and we'll hit OK to that. And there are two things that have happened here. Number one is we're seeing a 0.77 inch pushing in on this side from the margin, and 0.33 pushing in this way. So two ways to set indents for paragraphs: using the buttons on the toolbar, or using the menu command for Format Paragraph. There's another way using the ruler. If we take a look at this paragraph and then glance up here at the ruler, I'll scroll up a little bit, or push this text up a little bit so it's easier to see. Notice how there's this triangle, actually two sets of triangles on the left side of the ruler. They're not at the 0 point where the text would normally be. They've been pushed in to this 0.77 inch mark. Now, another way I can adjust this hanging indent for this particular paragraph is to move down to this bottom box, press and drag it in, and that forces this one paragraph to be indented further. Or I can say, no, I want to go back out here further. It's as if every single paragraph has its own ruler. And so what it means is when you have a blinking cursor inside a paragraph and you go up to that ruler and start messing around, you're only changing the ruler for that one paragraph. Let's go back and look at the right-hand indent. I've got my cursor blinking here. Now over on the right side, there's the right indent triangle, and if I drag that in, this one paragraph gets adjusted. If we take a close look at the ruler, you can see where those indent markers are. Now I'm just going to go and click in a totally different paragraph. Notice how the indent markers change. I'll click again. They go back to the way they were. It's what I was talking about, where every paragraph has its own ruler, and the ruler being different for each one. As you click in a paragraph, it's telling you what the settings are. So to make a long story short, the easy way to set indents is by clicking in a paragraph and using the buttons on the toolbar. A more precise way to deal with indents is by clicking in a paragraph, then going to the Format Paragraph command. And a third way, which you may like to use, is to click in a paragraph and mess with those markers on the rulers. That's the basics of setting indents. Another really important paragraph formatting attribute has to do with paragraph spacing, spacing before and after a paragraph. Notice how I'm getting these nice gaps to show where one paragraph ends and another begins. You can see that how I did it was by typing extra returns. So I typed using Microsoft Word, return, return. Installing Microsoft Word 97, return, return. Now that works, but there's some real downsides to doing that. Number one is there's a lot of extra keystrokes involved. Number two is when a page break gets introduced, we can see a problem area crop up. Let's take a look. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click in my scroll bar here below the box to jump down a screenful and another screenful, and I'm going to just keep going down till I see this dashed line which indicates a page break. Now here's something that can happen to you is I've hit return, return. Now this is the beginning of page 2. This dashed page break line tells me that. There's a carriage return, a blank carriage return sitting at the top of page 2. Now what that means is if this was a long report that I was doing for a client or some kind of proposal, page 2 starts a little lower than page 1 because there's this extra return. Now what I used to do to try and solve this is I would use my backspace to pull out that extra return to shift that text up again. And then on all the subsequent pages where that happened, I'd pull those up, etc. The problem is you can get everything to line up, but if you then make changes to your copy or just change formatting, you may find yourself having to put those returns back in again. So what I want to show you is an attribute for paragraphs which lets Word put spaces in for you without you even having to think about it. What I'm going to do is scroll up here back up to the top of the document and show you what would happen if I were to delete these from these first opening paragraphs. I have 3 paragraphs now, and none of them have gaps set in between. Let's go to this second paragraph, and I'm just going to click so I have a blinking cursor in it. Under our Format Paragraph command, there is spacing before and spacing after attributes. Let's take a close look at this. What I can do is, by using these little up arrows or down arrows, adjust spacing before or after a paragraph. Now it's jumping in 6-point increments. 6, 12, let me get on there, 12, 18, 24. A 12-point gap, if you're not familiar with measuring in points and picas, 12 points is about the equivalent of 1 line of type. It's a rough equivalent. So if I say, well, put a 12-point gap space before this paragraph, it should leave the equivalent of about one carriage return. Let's hit OK to that. And notice what's happened. This one paragraph has jumped down, and there's no extra carriage return in there making it happen. So what I'm going to do is highlight across 3 different paragraphs and try this again. Format, paragraph, and spacing before. Now, because I had 3 different paragraphs represented, all 3 of them get the gap before. This is kind of sometimes hard to grasp. Remember, if I want to change just one paragraph, I only have to click in it. But if I want to change more than one, then I need to highlight across them. Now, I've done kind of a sloppy highlighting job, but it doesn't matter because I've gotten a part of each one. I could do a highlight like this, and it would still represent all 3 of those paragraphs. Okay, so you're probably saying, well, that's great, Steve. I can select a paragraph and put space before or after. That seems to be not so easy. Why would I prefer that over these multiple carriage returns? Here's the great thing about using spacing that way, is that if you set a space above, and Word happens to break the page at that point, Word automatically knows not to use the space. So you could type a 400-page long report, and you could be sure that your text always lines up at the top of each page right on the margin. So try to use paragraph spacing rather than carriage returns to space text out. On shorter documents like letters or memos, I still do the multiple return thing. But on things like reports and longer documents, I always choose paragraph spacing instead.